Taxi drivers of Reddit, have anyone actually jumped into your taxi and screamed "follow that car"? If yes, what happened? I did that once as a passenger. We said it as a joke. We were in a group of 6 and couldn't fit in a single cab. So I went into the second cab and said, "Follow that cab." We expected the driver to laugh it off and ask for our destination. Instead, he just took off and followed the first cab. I was in New Orleans once and a cab I was in got sideswiped by a drunk driver. The drunk driver then took off. I told the cab to follow him, which he did. We ended up in a parking lot and we watched them go into an apartment building. Cabbie had the station call the cops. I wrote a statement for the cabbie and he called me a new cab while he wanted for the cops. Friend of mine is a taxi driver and this has happened to him. An elderly man rushed inside his taxi and pointed out loud to follow a red Toyota. This man never explains why to follow, just tries to frantically call to somewhere. My friend asked multiple times if they need to call police, but the man just waved no and pointed to follow the car. They circle around the town, finally ending up to a front of a house where the car followed parks. As the car stop, man says, "Hold on a moment, I'll pay," and jumps out of the car. An elderly lady steps out of the red Toyota and a man, apparently her husband, starts to scream, "Why did you left me at the mall?" Woman is waving her hands screaming back, "What are you screaming about, you are here?" and walks inside the house like nothing has happened. Man returns and pays the drive, being sorry about it all at the same time. My friend thought they were following a burglar or something, but it turned out the lady just forgot her husband at the mall. Funny situation in a way, but sad in a way too, as my friend said. Dementia. I followed the car. It stopped in a suburban house. Dude went into the house. They were his family and didn't have room for him with them. I used to ride a pedicab, bicycle taxi, in NYC. A drunk finance bro told me to follow his friend who was running away. I caught him in about a block and a half. The bro jumps out of my truck not paying and tackles his friend. He then comes back to me and gives me $40. I asked a taxi driver that question many years back. He said that happened on 2 separate occasions, and both times, a wife was trying to catch her cheating husband committing adultery. I drove a taxi one summer in a party resort. One night, 2 guys jumped in and yelled, "Follow that car," which was another taxi that I knew the driver of, and I obliged. Turns out, one of their mates was drunk AF and decided to just go to their hotel without telling them. They only saw the guy leaving the club drunk and they thought he was going to a strip club without them. He was actually going to their hotel, as he was hammered. Another time 3 girls jumped in the car and said, "Follow that car." The car in question was a black sedan, tinted back windows. Yet wasn't that shady emo. We follow the car for 15 minutes, leaving the resort going into a forest. The girls start freaking out, as one of their friends, also a girl, was seen stepping into that car. Yeah, turns out, that she just hooked up with some guy in the club they were earlier and she was about to suck his D when we pulled up next to them. Weirdest summer. This sort of happened to me about 20 years ago. Not a taxi driver, although I was driving down a main road and saw a dude running around with a baseball bat and then cop cars parked on a side street. Young me decided that I want to get involved, so I pulled down the side street and found a cop on foot a good distance away from his car. I told him about baseball bat guy and he gets on his radio. Guess he got an immediate update on his radio, looks at how far he is from his car and he says, "Can you drive me down the road?" I'm thinking fuck yeah, and tell him to jump in. He does, and I am seriously driving around back roads with a cop riding shotgun giving me directions while on his radio. Only lasted for about 2 minutes and then he jumps out to pursue the guy on foot. Not a very satisfying ending to the story, since I never found out what happened. But damn it, that's my story. A personal trainer at my old gym did this. He saw a guy shoot another guy in the head and jump into a car, so he got into a cab so the shooter wouldn't get away. The cabbie followed the car for a bit until he learned that he was following a murderer, then he pulled over and refused. Turns out, The shooter was an undercover police officer, who sped away because he thought the victim's friends would get to the scene before the cops. I had a fare jump in my car, who immediately started berating about my car, and how Uber does not allow drivers to use two-door cars. This came as a surprise to me, because I was not, and never have been, an Uber driver. I was just parked in front of the hotel waiting for a friend. Not quite what Op asked, but almost a colleague of mine, a UK police officer, was on foot patrol and saw a robbery in the distance where a driver was pulled from their car and the robbers drove off in their car. My mate did exactly as Op has said, stopped a civilian car and said follow that car. The driver apparently went wild trying to keep up with the robbers, all the time with a uniformed police officer in his passenger seat, giving a commentary to his base. They lost the stolen car, and my colleague asked his driver to stop. He got out, and let the driver go without asking his details. As the driver went into the distance, my mate realized he'd taken out his peg, truncheon, in the car and left it on the dashboard. Luckily the driver rang in later and it was returned. No idea what happened to the robbers, stolen car or victim, sorry. Friend driving a cab had this happen once. It was college students out on the town and their friends got into a cab just prior to them. Yes, he chased it to wherever they went. Tipped him nice, he said. Very anticlimactic. Not a taxi driver, but one time after a work party a bunch of coworkers and I were going to a different bar and we needed to take cabs. A few of us got into one and the rest in another. One of my coworkers told our cabbie, "Hey, if you can beat that other cab, I'll give you an extra $20. The cabbie smiled in the rear view and said, "Okay, buddy." He started weaving between cars until he got in front of the other cab. Then he perfectly timed it so he could get the other cab stuck at a red light while he just made it past. With that head start he had no need to really rush and he calmly got us to the bar first. I think he actually really enjoyed it and got a pretty nice tip for a short trip. I'm not a taxi driver, but I was the passenger for a story that is similarly cliched. Back when I was an actor, active drug addict, alcoholic, what's the difference? I know, I had a director threaten to recast me a week before the show if I was late to rehearsal again. To put that into perspective, recasting a major role after rehearsals have started is generally unheard of, and almost unthinkable so late in the rehearsal process. She was really fed up with me. On this particular day, I was running late as usual and had 5 minutes to get to rehearsal. It was a 10-minute walk or a 5-minute drive. I flagged a cab, hopped in and said I need you to take me to this address and, if you can, I need you to step on it. The driver smiled wide and said I've always wanted to hear that. Cue him putting the pedal to the metal. Within 10 seconds we were approaching 65 miles per hour on a 30 miles per hour city street, weaving through traffic, clipping yellow lights too close for comfort, and generally whipping this cab around in an extraordinarily haphazard and irresponsible fashion. I was stunned, wide-eyed, in absolute shock and terror, unable to process that he quite literally heeded my request or that this was actually happening. I thought I was going to die. It was the best cab ride of my life. I was 2 minutes early to rehearsal. I'm actually a taxi driver, bike taxi/beta cab. I was hanging out a corner when a coworker of mine got a ride across the intersection. Suddenly a guy walks up to me and tells me to follow that cab, but keep a distance. This guy looked current or ex-military, demeanor, haircut, attitude. Has one of those earbuds like the agents from the Matrix. Exuded the vibe of being very professional, competent and not giving a fuck at the same time. So I was born for this moment. I read all the Tom Clancy books as a kid, all the books about spycraft during World War II and the Cold War, every spy movie ever made, etc. I kept about 100 yards distance and then would accelerate when they went around a curve anytime they were near a light or intersection. I have all the lights memorized, to ensure we would make the same light but a little later than they did. At one point a car pulls up alongside and another guy switches places with the original guy and we keep going. After about 12 blocks the pedicab pulls over ahead of us and the guy tells me to pull over. Hands me a $20 for a $12 ride, although I would have done it for free just to live my 9-year-old fantasy. Probably just local cops, but I can dream. Probably just local cops, but I can dream.